So I hope everyone can hear me. Thanks so much for welcoming us and letting us be a part of this. First of all, I do want to say that I'm stepping in for our head of child protection and child rights, who is currently on a joint visit with UNICEF in the eastern part of the country. Normally, I would appreciate it if he was here. Unfortunately, we weren't able to. So Agnes, our advocacy and campaigns coordinator here in Uganda, has joined us, and we're going to try and help complete each other. I wanted to very briefly use the time to emphasize what we think works here in Uganda, and an example of what we have found to work here in Uganda. I want to emphasize first the importance of child rights programming. The Child Rights Organization. We believe strongly that child rights are human rights, and therefore it's upon all of us to ensure that what we are doing in our programming here is protecting and ensuring the rights of girls at risk for child marriage. So this is kind of an underpinning of all the work that we do. So a couple of examples of activities and programs that we've been working with and that we are actively promoting and pursuing here are founded on the rights of children, and particularly the rights of girls, those girls at risk of child marriage. One of the most successful approaches we found is to engage in direct child rights programming. In Karamoja recently, we successfully piloted a direct girls empowerment activity, and these were led in peer groups. This is a program where girls learned about their rights. I think everywhere in the world you look, maybe outside of Scandinavia, children don't have access to that information and knowledge about what their fundamental rights are as children based on the Child Rights Convention. So this program used that as a starting point. In groups, in their peer groups, these were groups of girls that were young adolescents at primary schools, along with other groups outside of primary schools. They were formed in peer groups, and they were led by educated female leaders in the community, such as a head teacher or a senior woman teacher at the school. Girls, once they learned about their rights, they also had the opportunity to learn about what are the issues in Karamoja, in Uganda, that are impacting on their rights. So, for example, the cost of education, those livelihood issues that impact on families and girls themselves when they make that decision about child marriage. Girls were then led through a curriculum and through an opportunity that we call Girls Solutions Labs. And these girls, you see me start to smile because I met some of these girls, and it was truly incredible. And I hope Agnes can maybe pick up. We met some of these girls, and I don't think I've ever met such a group of young, outspoken, talented young women that had come up with their own solutions for those local issues impacting on their rights. I fondly remember this young woman who told us about how she convinced her mother to send two of her young sisters to school. She taught them how to write their name on a piece of paper, brought the mother in, and showed them what they could learn, because the mother was skeptical that the girls could learn. And so this was just an incredible example of how a girl learned about the access to education, the decision-making that goes on in a family, and she took the right of her sisters to go to school into her own hands. This, of course, was coupled by the girls coming up with their own livelihood options, so they had the money to support other girls that were outside of school. So these Girls Solutions Lab and this direct empowerment of girls to understand their rights and act on their rights, I think is absolutely key. And I hope Nina's going to talk a little bit more about this, but this has just been a very small pilot, but wildly successful, and we want to do more of this. The second, Agnes, do you want to jump in here, or should I move on to education?
Yes, sure, Bev. I wanted to comment about the role of the peers in getting other children out of marriages. Because while speaking to some of these girls under the Girls as Drivers of Change program, we realize that most of the marriages that they get into do not actually succeed. And so some of them are looking out for another opportunity to return to school, but are skeptical and not sure about how to get back to school. And having these girls empowered has actually helped to reach out to those girls who are in failed marriages but would like to come back to school. And we have seen quite a number of girls return to school through these peer connections. Yeah.
That's such a great point, Agnes, because you're emphasizing the point about, yes, peer pressure is sometimes one of the negative impacts on child marriage, because girls, I worked in Niger before, and girls often reported that they saw their peers come back with a marriage box and new cloth and soap and all these gifts they got from their mother, and they too then wanted to get married, or their peers left school and they left them alone in school in their peer group. So you're emphasizing, and that was what was so amazing about the Solutions Lab, that impact of positive peer influence as well. Absolutely key. I know that we have talked about education already today, but I am not going to stop talking about the importance of education until every child in the world has the right to education. We know that education and schooling is the #1 protective force for children after the family. And when in Uganda, when the school shut down in COVID, this left over close to 15 million children out of school. Over 7 million girls were out of school. This in the country with one of the youngest populations in the world, and the 3rd largest refugee response in the world. So imagine when you see huge numbers of children no longer in school, no longer with that protective force of education. One option we're promoting here is called accelerated education. What this does is it gives a quality basic education in 3 years compared to a poor quality and often unsafe education that children might get in the 7 years. We see huge dropout rates after the 4th or 5th year in education of girls. If you look at some of the scales, the minute girls hit 4th and 5th grade, the numbers just drop like this until you get to 7th grade. And this speaks to the unsafe nature of school, it speaks to the cost of school, and it also speaks to the quality of school. So when you have 90 children in a classroom, a child comes home, they aren't learning, the parents no longer recognize the value of education. Child protection. We were just on a call yesterday with USAID in Uganda about the need to build one child protection system in all districts in Uganda. We need to cut out that duplication and ensure a bare minimum of 1 to 2 well-trained social workers at the sub-county region, along with strong community protection mechanisms. Why do we need this? You spoke to that already. Awareness raising is necessary, and I am going to emphasize something called rule of law messaging. People need to know about the laws that are on the books. The laws are there here in Uganda. We just need to enforce them, and people need to understand them. Finally, you mentioned cash. I'm thrilled you mentioned cash, because this is obviously a livelihood issue, right? So many girls see their way out. You spoke about their decision to marry. The number of girls that we have spoken to here in Uganda who say, lacking food at home, lacking shoes, lacking clothes, lacking menstrual hygiene products. And who comes along and offers that? An older man with a job comes along and offers a few little things. The girl sees that as her way out. So cash plus is important. Why plus? Because we can couple cash with that key messaging around access to relevant education and the child rights infused messaging. So I'll leave it there, and I'll let Agnes, if you want to add anything, if I've missed out on something, please do. And those are just some of the things that we know that works, and things that we need to scale up in these countries with large populations of girls at risk of child marriage. Thanks.
Thanks, Bev. Our time is up, so I will hand back to the moderator.
Okay. Thank you so much. We would love to hear from you. I don't know whether you followed any of the discussion, but anyway, it would be great to have your input from the Jordanian side. So please, the floor is yours for some time now.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I was attending, but from the participants link, so so that's fine. It's lovely to be with you here today, and I'm representing here my colleagues in Jordan. I'm Abbas, the country director for Plan International in Jordan, and I would like to ask, of course, thank you for organizing this event, and thank the Danish Ministry for Development in leading this important work on child marriage and prevention globally. In Jordan, the national data shows that child marriage has been increased after the Syria crisis and during the Syria crisis in the last 10 years, but it seems to be continuing rising lately. This can be attributed to school closures, economic stress, and service disruptions brought on by COVID-19 pandemic. This means that the most vulnerable girls, especially refugee girls, are at increased risk of child marriage. To concretely tackle this issue, of course, all of us need to take a long, hard look at the real causes and the root causes behind this issue, which includes examining some of the underlying economic and cultural factors and social traditions that approve and normalize this form of abuse. To address this issue, Plan Jordan, even before this our engagement in this report, and while during our engagement in this report, we have been designing and implementing our interventions to be geared towards ensuring adolescent girls and young women can be informed, can make informed decisions over their lives, decisions that are free from any form of force or violence. We particularly support vulnerable adolescents and youth who are at risk or at survivors of GBV, including, of course, the child enforced and child early and of course and sexual violence as well. So we do that by raising awareness on this topic and delivering quality, gender responsive and inclusive services for youth and adolescents. Through this holistic model that we implement with our partners in country, we work with children, adolescents, youth, as well as their parents and caregivers, the wider community and the service providers at the national level, and the policymakers and the duty bearers. So Plan also has taken active leadership role in GBV coordination at the national and the regional and the global levels, and has successfully advanced a number of priority areas in this agenda, including the topic of child early and post-marriage. In Jordan, we are actively engaged in various coordination and advocacy platforms that are created where all civil society organizations and government representatives who can join these platforms. So we join forces with other key stakeholders and influencers to address the issues that are facing adolescent girls, particularly early and post. Building on these efforts, of course, come this collaboration and partnership with the Human Rights Center at the Berkeley School of Law and the Information and Research Center of King Hussein Foundation in Jordan to facilitate the data collection in two areas in Jordan, East Amman and Karak, and to ensure that the voices of Jordanian and Syrian girls are not only heard, but also at the forefront of this important research. When asked about the perceived disadvantages of child marriage, a significant number of girls in Jordan mentioned the fear of abuse, mistreatment, and neglect by husbands. So they spoke in details about how girls who marry at a young age are more likely to experience physical, emotional, and emotional abuse from their husbands or neglected and abandoned by them. So let me read for you a quote from a 15-year-old married girl in Amman who expressed this in her own words. She said, because she's young, he, which is the husband, he controls her. If she's young and he is older than her, he would control her and hit her. He would do whatever he wants. So it's critical that we don't abandon these girls who are bravely speaking out. It is our responsibility to prevent child and early forced marriage and other forms of gender-based violence. Definitely long-term flexible funding to implement programs such as the one that we are implementing, the programs we are implementing, along with our partners, along with our sister organizations in working in country. It is very critical to have this long-term and flexible funding to address these gaps. So we would like to present to you a number of priorities based on our learning from this research and from our experience in working on the ground and with our partners delivering these programs. So it's important to continue gathering existing evidence from country-level reports, such as this one, the one that we are discussing today. It is important also to consult with girls, families, stakeholders within the communities about what they need to be able to prevent child marriage and to respond to the needs of married girls. It's important also to develop multi-sectoral program model that promotes protection, education, sexual and reproductive health, economic empowerment, and gender equality, with the participation of adolescent girls to improve access to services and advocacy at local and national levels. It's also important to build the capacity of humanitarian activists by making an evidence-based child marriage in humanitarian settings model. We need to build that model that is evidence-based, that will be available to practitioners, providing trainings on prevention and response programming, including and increase deployable technical support. We need finally to improve accountability to adolescent girls by including them in the designing, testing, and gathering feedback. Through this work, you have heard today, and it was wonderfully presented, along with other initiatives that we are involved in. We will continue to be committed to ensuring that girls' rights and voices are upheld. Thank you very much, everyone, and really happy to be here with you. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you so much, Mona. That was really great.